it's all about the micro nuances. And it happens to be like the slightest bit of trajectory difference, the slightest bit of timing difference over certain hands or certain feet will completely adjust like where you're going or where you're landing. And so once you're more intimate with like, okay, I need to go up, but all my holds are facing sideways. How do I go up with these holds? That's what climbing is, right? And so as climbing gets more and more difficult, the movements don't get that much more complex, not necessarily.
All right, Tim, my dude. How's it going, man? Welcome to the Testpiece
Josh.
podcast. I forgot about that part. We're at the Testpiece podcast. We're doing it.
What's up, guys? What's up, Josh? How's it going, man?
Good, man. We've just been talking for the last hour and then we clicked record because didn't want to waste all the good climbing talk into the ether. We wanted to bring in a little package, put it online, share it with everyone. How's it going, man? How are you doing?
Dude, things are so good. I've been having way more fun with climbing, and I've been on the upward trend, which is super nice. I would say that the knees probably still below 50% of normal, but man, it's such a breath of fresh. I wanted to share some thought I had before too. Like, you were telling me as a, just on a call as a friend, you were like, it's gonna just hit one corner, and then it's gonna be on the upward. But until that corner, it's gonna be, pretty bad. And that's exactly what this injury was. But as opposed to like other injuries, like finger injuries can feel kind of like you can build slowly and build slowly. And that, I think, if you know how to navigate the finger, that can be kind of more motivating. But on the other side, Michaela, I've been dealing with Michaela's injury as well, and like trying to help her through it. And she just keeps re-injuring herself and getting like, not so psyched. And so like it's been pretty hard to, juggle both thoughts, but it's made me realize a ton about this knee injury and like kind of the mental impact it's had on me. But dude, 2 months later, or almost three, it's almost been 3 months actually.
Jeez, it's a long time.
And yeah, it's a long time, but at the same time, like it's a relatively fast recovery. I feel like for an LCL, as far as an LCL goes, and it felt like a bad one. Now that I'm like have been talking to people about it, and the amount of pain I was going through for the first like week, I think I knew it was a pretty bad, not a grade 3 LCL tear, but a bad grade 2. I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty happy. This last week I've had, been climbing with my buddy Felipe from Brazil, who's on their team
Strong
for World
boy.
Cups. Super, super strong. You guys have seen probably his kilter board 360 climb. And it's just been, dude, it has been such pure climbing fun. I'm super excited.
For anyone who can't see you, which is most people, you're smiling, dude. You've just been a happy guy a lot more in the last couple of weeks, and yeah, it's because you're grabbing grips and pulling on them, and I'm just psyched for you. I do know that it's such a bummer when you get hurt. Like it's so weird to be this athlete that feels good, and then when you hurt yourself and you hurt yourself bad, you're like, whoa, like my leg doesn't work. Like what's
Yeah.
going on there? Like it just doesn't work, and it's weird how all of a sudden you will look at certain moves or whatever and it'll make you cringe. Like it's like this visceral feeling where you're like, oh man, like I can't do that like anymore, and I hate
Yeah.
that. But you're
Literally, I
smiling.
posted the other day on Instagram. I posted some like I did a V9 called Slice and Dice here, which is for me it was actually super super hard. Felt maybe like be easier if I was shorter and just younger with smaller fingers, but it was pretty hard, and I was psyched. And then I looked through a bunch of old videos, and I saw this one that I did at Momentum like in November, and it was this crazy crazy hard V12 that I did, and I was just in so much better shape. But then there was this really, really warped heel hook on it, and immediately I saw this heel hook, and even though I had done it before, I was like, "Oh, ow!" Like I was just thinking about it. I was like, "That looked like not a healthy heel hook whatsoever." But yeah, I definitely still cringe a lot when I think about sequences with my knee.
Well, I'm happy to see you out there. What'd you say, on an upwards trajectory? It just made me crack up when you're talking about your injury being on upwards trajectory, but that's kind of what climbing is always good, is when you're on upwards trajectory. So little double entendre there. I liked it. And we'll get into more of this topic later in the sense of what it's really like to come back from an injury and how to really ramp up into that last. I mean, I know you're still probably on the ramp and thinking of like the last 25% or something, but I do think that like we were saying, all of a sudden you get hurt and then you get better faster than you think. And then you plateau for a long time. And then as you finally reach like that another level where you're starting to get healthy again, then it's like, what now? Like you're weak, you're out of shape, and you never appreciate how in shape you were and how much you were crushing until you try to get back to there and you're like, oh, that last 5-10% is a lot longer of a slog than I realized it was going to be. So I just think that's going to be a fun topic today. But I'm happy you're smiling, man. I'm happy to see you back pulling hard.
Thanks, man.
Seriously.
It's a huge, yeah. I mean, for all of us, I'm sure everyone who's listening has had some form of up and down in the climbing journeys themselves. And man, I think it's a weird one. I've been talking about it with Michaela too, my girlfriend, and like the amount of impact something like this has on my life. I was just talking about it with her dad yesterday too. Like, you know, I had no idea, like how much it would affect my mood. And it's like it's not just my job or anything. It's really what has made me happy for since I
It's
was like
you, dude.
13 years old. It's
It's
me.
you.
Yeah, and just like, yeah, I can still climb. Like you were texting me this like, well, you could do so much one-footed on the moon board, and I was like, yeah, but I don't care about getting into shape. Like I care about climbing for fun, and like climbing with one leg is not that fun for me. Like not right now. It's not.
And
Uh,
Tim, be honest, what you also said, where it was climbing not hard is not fun, or what you say? You said
yeah,
climbing
for
hard
sure.
is fun, and it's, I don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
sound elitist there. Just that idea that climbing at your best is the fun thing, not yeah.
For sure. Yeah, and it wasn't even yeah, I didn't even mean like climbing at like a super hard level, but I mean like climbing well on the wall and like, knowing that you're using your technique, knowing that you can like feel super confident. Like that's actually been on that note. It's been the hardest journey back is like noticing all these negative habits, mental habits that have been picked up. And like, or dude, it's crazy too because like I podcast on this stuff, I coach on this stuff, and like I worked on this stuff, which is why, and I was bad at this stuff, which is why I'm able to coach and podcast at it, and now I'm like back to it. So I find that like actually my reflection period at home or like during rest and stuff has been the most important, where I'll like have a couple attempts and I have all the the whole vomit mouth things, like all the negative thoughts inside, and I'm like, wait, what? But what was I actually thinking about right when I pulled on? And I'm noticing all these crazy kind of negative thoughts that I'm super psyched to go into later, which is because then that kind of dictates how I work on myself during that period of time, and like what I actually try to focus on, and so hopefully that can help you guys. But man, it's been interesting. It's been super interesting. But yes, I'm finally happier, which is the most important thing.
I can tell, man. That's great. Well, before we get into that big mega topic, I just wanted to brag about a huge trip that I took. It wasn't to Switzerland. It wasn't, it wasn't a Mose Valley. It wasn't to Korea. I went a few hours west. I went to the Bay Area and I got to climb in some gyms. Yes, Tim, I climbed in gyms that were really good. And it was so freaking fun. I had to go to the Bay Area for some work, but while I was there, I went and I saw Mosaic, which was doing this Telegraph tune up or Telegraph turn up, which is their annual event, which is a big comp. And I got to go to a little pre party there and see all the boulders that are just sick. And then I also spent some time at Benchmark Berkeley, which was my first time there. And shout out to Max Kremer for giving me a little tour there too. And dude, it's just hard boulders, good colors, good setting, great setting at both those places.
Good movement.
Dude, and there was the angles, Tim. There was this thing that was like, I don't know, 40, 50 degrees and like
The
17 feet
wedge.
tall. Yeah, the wedge. It was so good. That is my jam. That is what I want to play on. And I just had a freaking blast. And I just wish I got to climb there all the time. I having a home gym. And then there was a site crew there. I was
Mm,
talking to Max about this, and he said that the group of V7 to V11 climbers or V12 are just, there's a huge group of them, and I think that's something that is underappreciated in the California scene is how lucky that is, because there's a lot of places that have a couple of pro climbers, but a core group of to me that's a pretty darn strong cohort, and just having that crew, and I felt it right when I walked in, and I got a bunch of people came up and said good things about the podcast, and I appreciate that. And just good on you guys. Good times out there. That was special. Love it there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't. I remember I went to Benchmark. Not I haven't been to the Berkeley location, but the one in San Francisco. And like I remember the first day I went, I think I climbed like almost every hard boulder in there. I just couldn't stop, and I was having so much fun. And but it was also like surprisingly simple, where I was like, man, it's just like, why isn't every gym like this? But I started to think about it, and just like these guys just understand how to session. They understand like what's really going on and like how to kind of maintain it. And yeah, you're totally right. You kind of made a side comment about like you can have a bunch of pros in a city, but that's not the same thing as having a psyched crew. And if anything, like having, it almost doesn't matter what grade people climb, as long as they're all like they care and they're psyched and they like all respect each other and they're all pushing each other, because that's not necessarily what happens. Actually, it is not what happens in an entire group of a bunch of pro climbers. Like
Mm,
if it happens to happen, that's
bunch of
really cool.
frenemies. Yeah.
Bunch of frenemies, yeah, yeah. It might not even be that dramatic necessarily, but there's just too many. I think too many people with too many different ideas and things. But I miss I miss my California crew time, dude. It was so nice.
Tim, I'll have to. I'm trying to figure out a trip out to Las Vegas to climb with you too, and
Yes.
get that psych. God, we were just talking about on this road to recovery path for you and how crucial Felipe has been and your crew and it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want. I know we've talked about this in many podcasts, but I just keep getting reminded of this fundamental sick site crew is number one. A good facility isn't necessary, but damn, is it fun. And all these little things that I see done well there, where they do stand starts and sit starts. It's so good to break into a new grade by having a stand start and a sit start. You've sussed out the top. Ideally, it's not more than 2 grades apart is kind of a good rule of thumb. So if you have like a V6 stand, you want maybe a V8 sit. And when it's a V6 into a V6, it's called a V8. So you can imagine how it's a good stepping stone for people. And just having those facilities and those holds and that good setting that encourages, it's funny because it's like straightforward, but not too straightforward. And there's little nuances in where you place your feet and body position. All right. I'm just geeking out and sweating hands because it's, all right.
No, it
All
matters
right.
so much.
Love
I
it,
mean,
man. Freaking
dude,
love it.
we were texting about this, and I think I literally wrote, Felipe saved my climbing life. Like I really do think that. Shout out to my boy. He booked a trip because the conversation started like last year, where I was trying to get him hooked up with Black Diamond. Um, and luckily they sent him some stuff, and they were psyched to talk to him, and I was like, it'd be cool to like be on the same team together, but also like do trips together. And so we kept scheming together some plans, and then I was like, you just come to Vegas, like we have a house, you could just stay there. It'd be the easiest way to start, like climbing together and making some content or whatever. And of course I got my knee hurt, and so I was like kind of bummed about the trip, him coming, because I was like, I don't know, like I'm just gonna like babysit him while I go out and stuff. I know I'm not gonna be able to climb by like February, March time. But no, dude, just like going out, he is one of the most humble, strong climbers I've ever met. He has like real conversations with me about not just climbing. Like we talk regularly on the roads and hikes about stuff, which is super important. Like you don't always want to be talking about just climbing. You talk about life as well, or like how the life kind of goes around climbing and stuff, which is super nice with your friends. But then also just showing him around this area that I've been climbing in for the last like 10 or 11 years has been showing me a new lens to look at it and appreciate it. And I think that's for me like something that was maybe the hardest thing, which maybe for some people sounds a bit straightforward, but like I just didn't appreciate climbing anymore. Like I didn't actually have fun. Like I didn't actually like see it as something I was doing for fun. I saw it as something that I was like, okay, I got to get back to where I was so that I feel in shape so that I can send hard stuff. And it's like, what a silly mindset, just like, okay, let's just go out and we're having fun. Felipe's having a blast. He's like, he's trying hard, getting upset, but then also so psyched. And it's just like the most beautiful, pure cycle for him. And just trying, I was like, and then slowly, like right away, I was getting my shoes on. Dude, I climbed 3 days on before yesterday. Yesterday was my first, like, I took a rest day, and it was my first time I climbed 2 days in a row. And I climbed 3 days in a row. And I hiked like 2 or 3 hours all 3 days with him. Like I was just so psyched. I can't help it. And then yesterday I wanted to climb, we just couldn't because we had a bunch of like family stuff we were doing. I can't stop climbing. Like it's so fun with him. Like I don't know, it
I
matters
gotta
so
ask.
much.
I gotta ask what he's super psyched. Like, what did he think were just stellar line? I assume it's his first time in Red Rocks.
Yeah.
And what was he super psyched on? Like, what of all grade ranges?
Yeah. So the coolest thing was, so I picked him up at the airport, and we didn't really like talk too much over text beforehand, because I was, he's gonna be here for a month and a half. Like we can talk when he gets here. He got here, and I picked him up, and I was like, so the plan that I was thinking was like, take you to craft for the first day and like do some volume. He's like, dude, I was thinking the same thing. Like I would love to, he's like, I made a bunch of mistakes in the past when I go on climbing trips. I always try some hard thing for like a bunch, and then I end up getting hurt in the skin and like can't try anything else. And then I walk away empty handed. And I was like, phenomenal. We podcasted about that like not that long ago. I think it's a huge, huge pro tip. And then he was like, yeah, sick, dude. Like, just, I trust you. Like, you've been around. Like, show me all the good stuff. And so the first day we just went off and did, a really nice warm up together. He did like a bunch of potato chip, Jones in, Dusty Coffee. He did Angel Dino, and then he did Progressive Guy like right away, like super quickly. And then we kept going and kept doing like chill moderates. It was such a beautiful day. And then he ended up doing like 4 more double digits that day, which was super sick. And then he took a rest day, and then we went to Willow Springs, and then we both got to do Ode to the Modern Mare, which was sick. We both did it first try. We did ride the white horse together, and then it started raining. It was just like kind of an epic time out there. And then not that many of the stuff was wet. It was like kind of a quick rain. And then we went to go try like Fuzzy Logic, Fluffy Logic, and he was just like then actually sessioning hard because that stuff was harder. And then we went to Black Velvet, had a nice Black Velvet day. He did Wet Dream really quickly.
Mm.
And then got kind of shut down on Atlas Shrugged, but not really because he was able to do it. He was just getting kind of shut down on just one move down low, and then 3 hours deep into the sesh, got kind of tired, and then we had to leave. And then we went to Trieste the very next day, and he was just like going ham. Dude, it's been like an insane trip so far. And his list now, and so because we've had like so much sending, it's like now he's like really psyched to bring up all these projects that he wants to try. And so now we're gonna start trying, go back to Trieste, probably go try the Nest, Kintsugi. I think he wants to try Squoze, and then maybe just like some new stuff. He's getting kind of psyched on. I know he wants to try the Shining Path, which is this really cool V12 highball, but I'm not so sure if we have enough pads and stuff for that. But almost everything. I think he wants to try everything before he leaves. So
Dude,
it's just,
I,
dude, so
I,
cool.
I just want to shout out to Ode to the Modern Mayor. Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
It's like that V. It's a V9
Mm-hmm.
back in Willow. It's so good. I think
So
that's
cool.
an underrated V9 that just doesn't get done. I feel like it's now starting to get done more and more, but it's a little bit of a hike. It's kind of like off. It's in
Mm-hmm.
like a almost like a cliff band, even though it's like
Mm-hmm.
in a stream bed probably. So good, man. Just perfect. I
So
think
cool.
that's one of the coolest climbs out there. And I feel like it just doesn't get talked about, even though the only other V9 that I know of that I would put on that caliber in Red Rocks is probably what is it? Fear of a
Fear.
Black Hat. Yeah, yeah. Just
Mm-hmm.
because there's something about those ones. Actually, dude, that was my first V9. Uh,
Fear of a
way,
Black Hat.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Well,
insane.
many moons ago. And it's so cool. It's like the first block you see when you walk into Craft, like the most, famous place, right?
Yeah.
Just it's tall and proud of rep. All right. Damn, that sounds really, really, really fun. And I can just tell by how giddy your voice is. It's so cool to see you out there being psyched. And I think there's a good lesson there around if you're hurt, you're not hurt forever. It will be back. And also maybe go out there anyways. Like, just be out there, be outside, reconnect with the joy that climbing brings. Because, dude, I gotta tell you, I definitely ebb and flow in that thing where sometimes I feel like I'm not enjoying climbing. Like I'm
Yeah.
so focused on like, why am I not getting stronger
Mm.
or why am I not in the shape I want to be? And even when you are in the shape you want to be, and then you get focused on like ticking hard things, then you get to the top and it's almost like you don't even really deeply enjoy it. And I don't know, like I don't want to get all philosophical or weird, but just check yourself. Just make sure that like don't go too far down that rabbit hole of grades sometimes. Like it's good to train, it's good to get stronger, and having that hard work ethic and getting that those results has a joy unto itself. But just check yourself, make sure
Yeah.
like you're not like let's do it because we love it, right? Like
Yeah.
let's be out there having fun.
Dude, it's like every injury I've had in my life has been for the purpose of like checking myself, just to be like, all right, dude, you're getting better, but you're not really having that much fun. So we're gonna slap you in the face a bit. We're gonna get you coming back, and you're gonna enjoy it the whole way, and then hopefully you kind of maintain that. At least is what it's felt like my entire career. So thank you for that reminder, Josh.
Okay.
I'm definitely gonna appreciate it now.
Well, I'm gonna segue that into the joy I had sending my mini warm up proj on the moon board that we went into last time, and I got so I was telling you about this climb. I think it was called 2017. It's on the 2016 set of the moon board. The problem is called 2017, just to make things really really tricky. It's set by Ben Moon. And in the last podcast, I told you I've been struggling on it. You told me it was easy and you flashed it. And then you went into like I told you my struggles and how I went into all this micro beta. And I thought that was a really cool segment. I actually got a bunch of comments from people like that was helpful. Like that was and it was fun getting to have you really have that coach hat on and be like, Josh, like I see what you're doing, but you need to focus on this. So I just wanted to report back, Tim. I just wanted to let you know that I did send it, and it was all thanks to you. No, but I sent it in a little bit of an interesting way. It's all about well, actually, just to take it back a notch again. I was saying that there was all these different layers that I was struggling with. It really culminates in this crux move, which is a big dyno where you rock over a right foot and you have no left foot. So you rock over a right foot and jump to the finishing jug. And I told you about all these different little micro beta I was trying to, get me up that move. And then you just were like, "Hey Josh, let's pull it back. Like, what's the thing? It is all about that foot. Like you need to jump off that right foot. Nothing else matters. I mean, not everything matters, but that
Mhm.
is by far the main driver." And so you were right. I really went back to square one, thought about that, and then I got a little sneaky, Tim, and I did find a left foot. And what I found was a bolt hole. I used the bolt hole with my left foot to push over to then jump off my right foot. And I think I did. I mean, I did that move first time when I tried it like that. And so first of all, I wanted to say thanks and give people kind of the closure that Tim's coaching did get me up the wall. But then I wanted to see what you thought about using a bolt hole on the moon board for your foot. What do you think about the
Mhm.
ethics there?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I also love the breakdown. It's so fun. And that's basically what I specialize in for coaching. Like, I think all coaches kind of focus on different things, but the thing that I focus on the most is like, okay, let's break down climbing to like the absolute most foundational things you should be focusing on. But the way that I look at that is through failure, and your ability to explain that failure, without even showing you a video is like pretty cool. And I also find that like people at a higher level of climbing can just talk about it and then like kind of solve just by talking about it, which is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool aspect of climbing. But yeah, dude, just like if anyone is struggling with anything on, especially on the moon board, which is for me like the best place to practice this stuff anyway, is to constantly try new climbs, maybe not at my maximum difficulty, but something that might cause me a fall. Which is also something I recommend when I coach people. I say, hey, find something that's going to take you a couple of tries at least. What's something you think you can do? Then you start noticing like, oh, I'm going to rely on things and I don't think about things. And it's like, dude, you jump over that right foot. But also it's interesting because both hands are facing left and you're going kind of like over right and up. So it's definitely, a little bit more complex than just that. Obviously, like Josh is a very, very, very good climber. So if he's falling on a V8, then it's probably extremely complex other than just like one thing. But that's the thing about strong climbers is when I coach
V8.
them, V8. About strong climbers, like that's why I pick simpler things, because the problem is usually that you're thinking about too many things, and so you're not giving extra effort to the one thing that kind of matters. That's kind of what we're focusing on. But the bolt hole concept, go ahead.
I was going to say that. So that's really, yeah, I like that. I love that distilling it. Also, something that's interesting about the moon board and something like this is that I just was joking when I interrupted you and I did little air quotes V8. But what's interesting is that just to kind of take the devil's advocate against me is that it might be V8. It's just
Mm,
it is this move and it exposes something very simple that perhaps I struggle with. And so this is what's kind of cool about these distilled climbs is it's like no, like you can do whatever grade like when it's like this and then all this is asking you is this simple thing you need to get over that right foot and jump. And there's plenty of people who like you flash that climb and there's probably people who quote unquote haven't climbed as hard as me or whatever that probably flash the climb and think it's straightforward. And so there's the mental component, there's the beta component, but then there's a potential that also just exposes something very simple in me that I am not so good at, which is kind of cool. It's kind of interesting.
Dude, I think that's a really, really important note that you're making. I think a lot of people don't realize that, yeah, you can, and this is why it's so important to look at grades in just the way that grades are, because you can climb 10 V6s and then hop on one V5 that you like maybe struggle on deeply. And that has nothing to do with your core value as a climber or your strength or anything. It just means that you probably don't understand how to do that one the best way. And that it's absolutely true, especially at a higher level where yeah, you just gotta kind of unlock. And what I think I mentioned that on the podcast last time we were talking about it. Once you do this movement, you're gonna be able to replicate that type of thing on another climb that has that type of movement again. And now you actually just know how to do that. So it really is. That's why I view climbing in this compounding of skills and mechanics that you should practice, and then you just apply them to other climbs over and over. And that's why when you said that, I was like, I know exactly what climb you're talking about because I remember pulling on that thing and being like, oh, that's so interesting. Like this is a weird mechanic, is a weird like momentum, and then is very very aggressive. Like the finish hold is like oddly far. Like it feels like you jump and then you jump out, not up, and it's super strange climb. But I remembered it anyway. Bolt hole I think is super interesting concept. So it's actually this is a Tnut hole, not a bolt hole. And
Oh,
a
correct,
bolt
correct, yeah.
hole a bolt hole would be technically allowed in competition to use in any sort of way. And in technical rules for competition, you cannot grab Tnut holes with your fingers, but you can step on them. I, in general, in practice, avoid as much as possible bolt holes and Tnut holes. But that's for the reason that we're gonna kind of go over is that you don't need them. They're like a really good training wheel. They're really really. It's like it invites that nice feeling for you where you're like, oh yeah, it is just that extra 5 or 10% that helps because in reality, it probably doesn't help as much as it made you feel like it helped. And, my suggestion would be to try it again, take it off, but just put it right next to where your foot was. And you'd be shocked at how much you're going to learn how to use that left foot. Because now, especially because I've practiced it so much, now that I use no feet, like I tend to use my quote unquote off foot so much more in climbing now. And I, squeeze the wall as much as I can. I push against it and I keep really, really strong tension. And again, this is why I'm so frustrated about my knee because that is exactly the type of motion and tension that hurts my knee is like pushing against the wall and squeezing it with the side of my foot or, like all that stuff I think is really good. And the bolt holes and the Tnut holes are just training wheels. They're just guidances to do exactly what you would do. And if you tried that move and I said, all right, or I just gave you a wall with no Tnut holes, you'd still put your foot in the same exact position, and you would just use it. You would have to use it a lot harder. But yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with it as long as you know that, and that's what I do for myself is like if I have to do a climb with the training wheel, I just make sure I do it again without the training wheel, I guess, is so I can kind of properly learn it.
Yeah, I'll go back and try again because that brings us to the other comment you made that we did post it. This make your projects your beep. It's a little vulgar there, Tim, but I'll give it to you. Yeah,
Oops.
I think that I think what's interesting is what you said there was you will be surprised how easy it is now that you've done it with that because you okay, how do I put this? Okay, so the Tina actually did help a bunch, and I happen to have on pretty new solutions, and they have
Ooh,
this rubber, and I could like really push in there. But I think one of the things that you're getting at is that it's very tempting when you're using your off foot to kind of just smack it against the wall, but that's not stepping on it. That like, and it's like, okay, but Josh, you're talking about smearing on a 40-degree wall. That's kind of slick. It's like, yeah, but the mechanics aren't really different. Where what you need to do is step on that wall, even though it's overhung and slippery. And it makes me think of like a drill I might try is if I can't do it without the foot or without the T-nut, then I'm going to do it with the T-nut and then get right back on and do it without the T-nut and try to basically mimic it. Because I
yeah.
think you're onto something there where I bet you if I look at my videos without using the T-nut, that my ankle position, everything is subtly different and in a bad way, and that's why I'm
Yeah.
not doing it. But having that little cue of the tiniest of foot chips really made a big difference.
Something I see commonly for people with smears when they put their other foot on, and even once I start directing them to okay, now you are aware of it, now you're going to use it more. It slides way more than they think that it does, and to practice having a very very controlled place of where you're smearing is really difficult. But yeah, you're kind of just talking about it. The T-nut hole, all it does is it gives you an extra bite towards a mechanic you're already doing. And so I think as climbers, we just have to understand. It's just same thing as like what we always talk about: make the holds a little bit bigger before you get to the actual difficult part of the move, because you're learning the move, right? And you say this all the time, like you'd be surprised at a higher and higher and higher level of climbing. You start realizing like how much people don't use their feet, right, at all. And that's just one version of like not using your feet is on a wall. You need some bite to use your foot. You absolutely do not. It helps you be aware of what mechanic to do, but it doesn't mean you can't do that mechanic without that bite, right? I think that's where the tricky practice just, and that's why I say there's no other way of practicing it, by the way, than doing it. There's literally no other way of practicing it than just like hopping on again, being like, okay, all right, let's just try this again. And yeah, I've done like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of laps on all sorts of moonboard problems where I constantly pay more attention, do the exact same way, and I change where my wrist angle is, or like what my thumb is doing, or if I'm full crimping or open handing, or if I'm going to push this way, or if it's a narrower foot stance or a wider foot stance. Those things matter so much. And so yeah, the littlest margins matter a ton in climbing, obviously.
This is a little tangent, but it's just kind of an interesting mechanic that I noticed is when I was doing without the Tnut, what I would do is kind of smear, I'd kind of get my first push over to the right side to get on the foot. And then as it would drag up, as I was jumping, I would do one last push with my smear foot, and it would often ejector seat me out backwards. Like it would push me out backwards. And it was just kind of this thing because it's like I wasn't getting over my foot enough to really stand up on the right leg. And so I was trying to get extra boost from my left foot, but ended up sending me backwards because, now you're basically like jumping, pushing 2 feet away from the wall. And when I look at the one that I did with the Tina, I don't do that. I just get all the weight over to the jumping foot on the good foothold and go straight up. And it's just funny how, like, that's a technique of you're kind of smearing a foot up and then getting one last boost off of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not like a bad technique. It just wasn't the right technique for this one. I just found that interesting that little change was a big deal for me.
Yeah, I think the reason why I also think this way is because of comp climbing. Like, comp climbing is very commonly like relatively simple movements. Like, everyone can watch most bouldering comps and like pretty much understand right away what you were supposed to do. But then why are these climbers falling? Is because it's all about the micro nuances, and it happens to be like the slightest bit of trajectory difference, the slightest bit of timing difference over certain hands or certain feet will completely adjust like where you're going or where you're landing. And so once you're more intimate with like, okay, I need to go up, but all my holds are facing sideways. How do I go up with these holds? That's what climbing is, right? And so as climbing gets more and more difficult, the movements don't get that much more complex, not necessarily. It's just how you get those movements done become extremely complex, right? And so when you're looking at these three relatively good holds on this V8, relatively good holds and a relatively good landing hold, it's a strange reason why you can't go upwards. And especially when you're pushing extra hard on both your feet, you're going backwards. Well, then you need to figure out like, well, how do I get up? And it's like, oh, I got to get over the right foot. I got to keep my left hand for longer. I got to, get momentum in a correct line of hip, because if you start swinging left, you're going to go right, but you got to make sure you go diagonal and up. There's so many little things you can look at, but the main thing there was what actually gets me going up. It's my right foot. So my left foot helps me use my right foot, right? It's not two independent feet. It's my left foot helps me use my right foot, and that
Yeah.
helps me get up.
I was chuckling when you said two pretty good holds to a pretty good jug hold at the top. Because when I was looking at and scrolling through, I was like, oh, I'm going to do like, V8 and just kind of like, I was like, oh, this one looks easy. I really was like, oh, I'm
Yeah,
going to crush it. Like, I know these holds are good. I'm just going to do this. Like, I don't even need to think about this. And then it's so fun having those struggles and breaking down those layers. It's what I like about climbing. And we often say this where, okay, I don't want to bring up this reel because it got a bunch of dislike, but that heel hooking reel I just posted on Instagram with a heel hooking 101, and we talked about like not feeling in your hamstring, but then sometimes there's ones where you do feel it in your hamstring. And the reason why I bring that up is because it's like you always still go towards fundamentals. Like there's still getting, and this is what you did when we were talking last time. You said, yeah, but Josh, what you really have to, you have a right foot. Where you're going to jump off that right foot. Okay. No, I know it's the holds are facing the wrong way, but just let's pull it down. What is the one thing that you have to get right? And so it's interesting because it's always these having that kind of base understanding what needs to happen right here. And then you start peeling back all the layers, and maybe it's a quote unquote wrong one, like in the heel hooking example, where sometimes you have to use your hamstring. And it's just, I just love what you said there, where it's like good holds, but then it's like, there's timing, there's all the nuance involved, but it's still just jumping off your right foot, Josh. Like, just think about it
Yeah.
like that. It's like, oh, good
Dude,
point.
yeah, think about this too. Like climbing is never taught for almost anybody. Like this is just something. This is why I got really obsessed with coaching as well, because I was thinking, I was like, how? Okay, so I'm a relatively good climber, but like, how did I learn that? Okay, I learned through a lot of trial and error and a lot of experiences where I wanted to do something in a 4 minute scenario and I couldn't. Or I tried something 500 times and I couldn't do it, and so I wanted to figure out what specific things could I always focus on that would provide a more higher likelihood of success. Because to me, it doesn't necessarily matter that much about knowing exactly how to do something perfectly. I would rather like to know, how do I operate my body so that most of the time it works mostly right. And that's why I focus on fundamentals. And if you think about it, everyone think about themselves as a climber. What fundamentals do you actually know very, very well in climbing? Right? Like, okay, you know that when you go right handed to something, your right foot should basically be the primary activator foot, and you should turn your right hip towards the wall to get height. Great. Most people know that one. What else, right? So there's a million layers of fundamentals in climbing, right? Because there's so many, there's an infinite amount of variables for climbing in terms of handholds, the distance between holds, angle of wall, friction. There's so many variables that how could you assume that you know all the fundamentals, right? And so when you're like, that's what I do when I say practice. When I go and practice on the boards and I go and repeat a bunch of like V4s and V5s and V6s, I am still getting so much out of those climbs because I'm using those climbs to reteach or to find new fundamentals that I think are really good applications for tons of other hard climbs. And that's the thing, is like, when you have a climber like Josh who's been climbing for 25 years, not to like break you apart or anything, but you probably over rely on certain feelings that you've had in many, many, many other scenarios of success. That's not using fundamentals. And so that's why when I coach like really, really experienced climbers, it's really difficult because I'm basically, rewiring something in their brain where it's like they already know that something provides success. But is it, if you look at it objectively, is that the highest, if you do it that way all the time, is that the highest likelihood of consistent success, right? If you keep doing it that way over and over and over again, and I give you 100 different problems, is that really more successful to do it the way that is feels best? Or if you break it down and say, okay, but what is the best way to do this objectively,
Yeah.
right?
It's only going to work if you want to stay at your same grade, right? Like
Yeah,
it might
exactly.
work for you now, but it's not going to work for you later.
It's that full crimp concept that Carlo was talking about, like the
Yeah.
reason why he kind of, his feeling about why he might, avoid it is because sometimes over a longer period of time, if you teach yourself maybe the more proper way to grip, it might not feel very good in the beginning, but over time you're teaching yourself more optimal. And yeah, again, I was shocked at that got so much negativity because, or so much pushback because you're not listening. If you're pushing back on that, you're not really listening as to what, because of course he full crimps, and of course a lot of us strong climbers full crimp. But every time I full crimp, I know I am just kind of bypassing a learning moment and instead just saying, all right, let's just grab this hold a little bit harder and let's just try harder. And sometimes that is good to provide some success, but sometimes it's not so good to learn. And I think
Yeah.
that's, where we got to separate the brains a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Tim, in all my years of climbing, I've actually never been coached. Just kind of, it's kind of a newer thing to have coaching. I was on the kids team when I was, 10 years old or whatever. But
Mm,
honestly, kids teams back then was like, here's some. We would go like running. We were like, okay, let's go on a run, and then let's climb together for a bit, and then let's do some push-ups afterwards. And that was our. No
yeah.
offense to my wonderful coaches at the Rocknasium, but it was not very technical. So yeah, I appreciate that. I'm glad to get to ask you these questions, and it is interesting being someone who I have built up many what I would probably call bad habits that I've actually tried to unlearn in the sense that I feel like I've kind of hit my ceiling, and no one ever likes to hit their ceiling, and the things I've relied on don't quite get me to the next level. It's interesting. It's and everyone has biases based on the sports they did beforehand. As a gymnast, I was always a very physically, my back kind of strong climber, and that's great until it's not. Like until it's just
Yeah.
part of the equation, and never stop growing, never stop learning, and recognize that getting 0.1% stronger in the thing that you're already strong at, probably not going to have much payoff there.
Yeah. And something, yeah, last thing to share here, like, I mean, one thing that I've always struggled with in the past, like talking to my friends about this stuff is like I'm not perfect just because I am able to observe that like, oh, we are as a group of climbers or as a society in climbing, like most of us probably aren't approaching it for the best like approach to getting the most ROI out of like what we do in movements and like what we do out of our sessions. And I'm not perfect either. And so like I think it's great that I can share this with people, but I want definitely people to know like I hurt my knee because of like kind of improper habits and like not really good. Yeah, I have pretty bad habits as well in specific cases, and like and I'm still trying to be a growing climber. I still want to compete. I still want to do really well, and like I'm gonna go and compete and not win a bunch of competitions. And for a damn fact I'm gonna come away from those comps and being like, okay, what bad habits do I need to work out? Because really the
Mm.
climber who steps on top of a podium is in that day they were the best one that day, and that day is just an assortment of what, like 12 different boulder problems usually in a bouldering competition. And it's like that's not that many tests to really see what somebody's capable of. And I think that's cool. So you just see what it is that day, and someone who can win comps consistently, seriously, someone who can win bouldering competitions consistently, you really know they're a good climber, right? Because they're able to look at a bunch of different boulders over and over again and actually be solving those with the least amount of falls and consistently in a different style. That's why I like it so much too.
Can I ask you a question, just as a
Yeah.
coach and seeing people like me who get stuck in these bad habits? Is that a big source of people's plateaus, or maybe a better question is, what's the most common reason people plateau? I'm totally putting you on the spot there, but just wondering what you think on that.
I think, yeah, definitely. It's a very, very good question, and it's a complex answer that I have like off the top of my head. And maybe we could talk about this on a kind of a longer form because it is very interesting. But definitely, the number one thing I run into is systems failure. And so I always explain this to people in this way of like, look, you're just the way that you looked at how success and failure works, the way that you digested what happened to you, and the way that you're telling yourself a new thing. That's a whole system, right? Like how you intake something, how you digest it, and then how you repeat something. That whole way of going, I think, is the number one reason why people plateau. And so for your case, like you probably already, just based on hearing you say it, you even acknowledging like I have bad habits. And that's something that very, very few people do. Some people say it and then don't actually think about it. Like they're like, oh yeah, I assume I have bad habits. But it's like that's a little bit different than going inside and identifying your bad habits, what those things actually do to your climbing. What do you feel mentally? Like for me, like I said before, when I was getting back into climbing, over the last 3 months of not really climbing that much, I assumed I knew these habits were going to be bad, and I didn't even think about them. And the biggest one was lately I haven't been solving my climbing. Super interesting. It's something that I had to unlock after like year 9 of like competing, where I would go to the climb, go to compete, see a bunch of climbs. I'm like, oh yeah, for sure. Like these holds go this way, and I'm a route setter too. I know what these feet are supposed to do. That's a little bit different than looking at the climb, being like, but what can I do with this hold? Like knowing my strength and knowing where I'm supposed to be, and like knowing how pumped I'm going to be there. Like what should I do? And what can I do? That's a very, very different way of solving something. It's so close though in nuance. In actual moments, like in hindsight, looking at the sessions, it's so hard to know the difference. And I think for me, that was the biggest reason why I maybe wasn't getting better so quickly, because I wasn't able to really solve climbing the proper way. But yeah, I think most people struggle with their ability to solve climbing, their ability to see objectively something that's failure and success, which then affect them mentally. And then they go through a bunch of rabbit holes of like, basically like, well, what am I supposed to do next? So everybody I see goes to the climbing gym and wants to improve and wants to get better. And I guess really if you look at it, what you do with that is whether you're going to get better or not. So that must mean logically that people aren't doing the right thing, quote unquote, but that comes from their own opinions, from a previous experience, which is probably failure or probably success. You believe in success too much in one way that's not actually accurate, or you blame something that's failure that's not actually accurate, and then you react off of that, you're not actually going to get any better.
It's interesting. It makes yeah. I'm just in my head thinking about what is holding me back, and I think something we do
Yeah.
here that's good in the podcast is that it's not always easy to know what is the thing holding you back. I mean, it's nice to say, "Oh, go get a coach," and we do recommend that. And Tim, you do coach people, but it's not always that simple. And some people just not what they're going to do. And for me, I have things that are holding me back right now, and I have an idea about some of them. But in some ways, you have to go and you have to find out. You have to put your effort towards solving them. And I've been through that cycle a few times. I mean, this is something that isn't talked about as much as some people don't run into any problems for quite a while and then they just
Mhm.
hit the ceiling. Some people hit the ceiling really early, and you have to bust through these ceilings. You have to do it. And I had some good progress as a kid and everything. I mean, I was lucky, but I've definitely been stopped before and been like, oh my gosh, like I need to change because what I'm doing does not work anymore. And it's kind of probably always like that, to
Can
some
I use
extent.
that? That's actually a wonderful example of what I was talking about because I know what I was talking about was probably really complex. People who have like success early on is a very good example of a systems failure. So when you have a lot of success, especially in a sport like rock climbing, and you don't understand rock climbing, I'm sorry, I'm just going to say it out loud. Very, very, very few people understand rock climbing as deeply as you can understand rock climbing, right? If not, if anybody understands it actually. And so when you have a kid who's like really strong and like really successful at like 80% of the stuff they do, and maybe on the 20% of the stuff that they're not so successful at, they still pretend that they're successful at it. Maybe they even lie to themselves and they're like, oh yeah, I'm like good enough at it, and they don't actually try. Like I used to do the same thing too, where I'd be like, oh, a bunch of team kids would be trying some slab problem, and I go over to him like, oh, that looks like I might fall on it, but like I know I'm like probably pretty good at slabs, so I'm not even gonna try it. I'm not even gonna test myself on it because I don't even want to lie to myself today. Like I'm feeling on fire. Like I was cruising all my other things. So success begets success, yes, but it also might lie to you if you're not super real with yourself. And then you run into the one thing that you're not so good at, and it just crumples kind of the whole process. And maybe you're not answering that question the right way, right? And so the way that I coach people nowadays, and by the way, on this note, if any coach ever says like, "Oh yeah, I know that answer, like for sure, this is what you need to do, like this is how you improve on this," they're probably lying to you, and they're probably not thinking about it deeply. I every time I've worked with somebody new, I pick up a lot of anxiety on like, I don't really know if I'm going to be able to solve this, and you're paying me lots of money to like help you get better, but genuinely, I'm not sure if I'm going to find that answer. And I think that helps me a lot because then I'm actually looking for the answer with them, right? And that's something that I think a lot of coaches don't do. Is they don't help look for the answer. They just think they know what the answer is. Anyway,
Just
um,
here's a PDF, and like this little sheet of paper will make it easy for you. You just need to go through here. It doesn't. Yeah, everyone's too
yeah,
different. It doesn't quite work out. Uh,
exactly.
I
And yeah,
I just wanted to say, just because you used that that chat about the slab climb and either avoiding it or just telling yourself, pretending. I'm always trying to help people look for clues as to where it might be that they have an issue. And I think about this sometimes on climbs that are vertical. So I really struggle on kind of like vertical or slightly overhanging vert and like really thin. And what I'll do sometimes is I'll get on them and it'll be easy-ish for me. But what I'll do is like there'll be this one hold that's pretty good, and I'll just crimp the shit out of it and like
mm,
lock it off, and I'll do it, but I did it in a way that only someone 3 grades stronger could have used that hold. And then I pat myself in the back because I did it. But if you really kind of take a lens and look at yourself in an honest way, you didn't really do the climb, or you didn't the climb asked you to do something, and you found another way, which if you were in competition, great. Like if you were going to die if you fell, great. But if you're just looking for hints, because I always say this, like it's like climbing and always gives us these hints. Like your friends tell you like, hey, you're really good at this. Or your friends always are trying to get you to go on climbs and you don't want to do them. Like there's always these little hints, and just listen to them, because I know what that means for me. Like, and if
yeah.
that resonates with you too, like you you overuse a hold that you can use because you have a certain strength, but just there's a hint there.
Yeah, that's not what mastery is about. And I think surprisingly enough, every single person that I've worked with, if I have a conversation with them, tend to get to this, like we funnel down a bunch of conversations, and at the end of the day, my question really is like, why does getting better at climbing matter to you? Because if you're not honest with yourself about like why it matters, because other if you could just go climbing and have fun, like that's great. Then you wouldn't be so stressed and you wouldn't have probably plateaus anyway. You would actually probably not ever run into a plateau. You just be getting better, and then because you don't have this obsession between getting better, you're just actually probably climbing and caring about it and asking yourself the right questions. So there's a kind of layer there where the more you care, maybe you're not so focused on the things that actually get you the success. That also might be, answering your question before, like a reason why people plateau is because probably they care too much about certain things that don't actually apply to their growth. But almost everybody that I talk to cares a lot about mastery, which is why I think a lot of people obsess over watching really, really good climbers as well, because they're curious on like, well, this person is totally a master of climbing. Like, what are they doing that, and actually, I think that's an improper thought as well. You're just looking at people who are really, really, really good at what they're really, really good at, and I don't think there's that many climbers who are, fully masterful in like everything that they do. They're fully mastered in very specific techniques. And, like, I think that's why Will Bosi is getting so much attention, because he's the one going around with a totally like sleeper build, someone who's like not like, oh, you're not like Magnus, or you can just like do front levers on your pinkies and stuff and like crazy one arm pull ups. And like, no, you're Will Bosi. Okay, you're a really good climber. And like, we want to see you on the hardest climbs in the world. And he's doing them, and it's like, wow,
He's
like
fucking
now we're
doing
seeing
them.
somebody. But that's interestingly enough, like people still want to classify him as like a crimp master. And it's like, I don't know if we should be careful with that. I had a really like strong thought about that right away when I saw this comp where like there was, I kind of forget, like Magnus was there, Adamandra was there, and like each of them set their own like style boulders or whatever. We'll end up setting this like really crimpy thing, and I was like, they just like over exaggerated that. Like he's a phenomenal climber. And by the way, I first saw Will Bosi at Lead World Cups. Like I first saw him at Lead World Cups, and I'm pretty sure like I've always thought that like lead climbers were just like some of the best climbers, but you might not assume that he could climb V17, but lo and behold, he's still just overall
Which
one of the best
which
climbers.
V17 are you talking about, Tim?
All of them. Who knows what he's going to end up doing? But I my only point there is it is interesting. It is interesting to see really who stands on top. If you really sift through all the layers of like, because again, results are results, right? But like I don't really care about results always as as an athlete, as a coach. I'm not really looking at results. I'm looking at systems and approaches. But I'm
So
glad that Will's kind of
so I
has a good
wanted to.
resume.
I do want to talk about Will Bosi because he just did Return of the Sleepwalker. I just want to say one more thing on that over reliance on certain techniques and being blind. And this is again why I think people missed what Carlo was saying on the avoiding full crimp. Is he's just saying, "Whoa, wait." If I keep my thumb on, if I kind of pinch the hold or have this
Mm,
open hand and have my thumb, I'm able to do other things. And so when people shut it down and say like, oh, that's stupid, that's a terrible idea, like full crimping gives you the most leverage on a hand, it just blows my mind because Carlo, one of the best all-around climbers in the world, and he's saying something that's like, hey, I know that full crimping feels really good to you, like I know that you can lock down that hold, but just check out this thing, like it's really interesting. And so again, it's like it's a hint, like, man, all I want to do with every hold is full crimp it, like everything single hold. Oh, this pinch. I mean, people like that, right? It's like, hey, here's a pinch. It's a good pinch. Oh, I'm going to full crimp it. Like, and whenever you see that, again, maybe it'll get you through that climb, but just there's a hint there. Like perhaps there's something missing in your climbing, or perhaps there's something that could be a world of movement could be opened up that maybe you're not quite as good at this point. But if all you can ever do is full crimp, then yes, you may even still get up Nagual or something, or like really hard crimp lines. It's a hint again that maybe you're artificially putting a lower ceiling on yourself than you need to. And when you're ready to understand that and explore that, keep an open mind. And there's a whole world out there of different ways
yeah.
to get through a climb.
On that note, I really want to repeat something that you said earlier about like an experience that you've had on like a slab problem or something where you can do this move if you just like full crimp through this and like over rely on the hand, but only you could do it if you were like 3 grades stronger than the climb. Dude, that happens so much. And I think it's great and all to talk about it in this way, but actually that's a huge learning moment. And if you never revisit that, like it's always going to be a bad habit, right? And that's what we all as climbers we have to do is observe those moments like truly deep down, like, but did I do it the easiest best way? Like, did I do it the most optimal way? Because I don't think that's a question that a lot of people ask themselves, and I don't think they know how to answer that, right? And I've talked about in many podcasts before, guys, like how you break down that whole process of like, what are you even supposed to look for when you fall? Like, and that's how you start doing that, right? Is like, well, what is the best? And it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of trying, and it takes a lot of just being humble to like being like, well, I guess maybe I don't know that, even though it feels better this way, like maybe it's not better, like, and yeah, that's just such an interesting point
Dude,
you were making.
so I don't know about you, Tim, but I almost feel a little bit embarrassed when I climb something poorly. Like I'll be climbing with people who are a notch or two lower than me, and I'm climbing on, whatever the climb we're on, and I do it, and I literally will say, and I'm like, "Oh, good job." I'm like, "Fuck, like that was
Mm,
hard. Like I did not do that one right." Like that really comes out of my mouth a lot, and I feel kind of like disappointed. You're
mm,
kind of like, ugh. It feels almost kind of gross. You're like, oh, I overpowered the shit out of that. Like that was
yeah,
not pretty. And it's funny because I say that it's not pretty, but sometimes it looks really nice if someone's so strong they just pull this thing down, make it look really static and good. But you should know deep down inside, you're like, ugh, I don't know about that one. That
yeah,
that that was not the right way. Like, do not.
yeah.
I
If,
say
if
this to my friends. I'm like, do not do what I just did. Like that is especially like maybe yeah, anyway, you know what I'm saying though. Like I'll
oh
be
yeah,
climbing with my wife. I'm like, that was not the right. Do not do that. Like that is not going to
yeah.
work for you unless you all of a sudden are 4 grades stronger. I just didn't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely a bit of advice for climbers who relate with what Josh said, which is also me. I definitely relate with what you just said. There's a balance there, like sometimes you're way too hard on yourself and you're like, "Oh yeah, that was like super messy." But then you're not taking into account like all these good things that just happened probably. But then also like yeah, you should definitely. I think it's good. Not that many climbers do that as well, I think, where they're really real with themselves and like, "Ah, that wasn't like perfect." Like I think some people are okay with doing things as long as they did the thing. And that sometimes is fine. And you kind of mentioned the moments where that is fine in a comp or if you're about to die. That's where that's okay. But otherwise, maybe you should be extremely sensitive to like, but was that the best way? And maybe we shouldn't get super emotional about it, but we should definitely harp on ourselves like, okay, that wasn't the best way. Maybe I should repeat that. Maybe I should do that again. And I think, yeah, huge learning moments through like, that's what I was saying, going back to that whole plateau question, like it is really, really, really complex to understand what the mind does, both in good and bad, but sometimes the good shows us bad, and we just can't listen to the stuff inside. We have to always ask we always have to ask the question, and that's how I coach youth climbers nowadays. The 3 youth clients that I work with, no matter what, I want them to start from a neutral place, right? If you're riding a high in a comp, that could be bad, right? Because then you're going to look at this new climb and be like, oh, like, yeah, for sure, I'm going to think X, Y, and Z thing. That's not an authentic way of looking at it. And some people say, like, oh, I love riding the highs and stuff. It's like, great, ride the highs of your confidence, but don't let that adjust the process for reading a boulder, because that happens all the time. And then vice versa. If you're not feeling so good, like, don't let that adjust how you read a boulder. Like, start from a neutral place always. And just, not realizing like how much tilt you might be having from a previous fall, or like how much you're lingering off that previous experience, or even just a previous try on the same project for hours and hours, like those previous attempts, or those previous feelings will almost certainly, you should actually just assume that it's going to adjust your next try. And so because of that, you should always look at it fresh and be like, okay, take a breath, like what is the best possible thing I could do on this next try? I think that's something that a lot of people can take away from this rant we were just having about the mind.
Love that as a micro, and just maybe do that as a macro too with your climbing each time, like, okay, what am I missing? Like, okay, no, I know
Yeah.
I'm feeling good, but what's a big hole? I'm just gonna close out our moonboard chat by saying I did just buy the 2024 set. It was sold out for super long. I was disappointed. I can't believe they like have all this media like blue hole. It looks all great, and then it just wasn't even for sale, which was a bummer. So it's still, I think I'm still like a couple of months out from when it gets delivered, but
What?
I'm moving on, Tim. I'm going. You talked
Months?
me into it, and I want to be on the latest and the greatest. So I don't
Nice.
know if I'll finish all the. In fact, I'm pretty darn sure I won't finish all the 2016. And I did get one. This is just like super minor tangent, but I thought it was a really good question. Someone was asking me about how I warm up when it's just the moon board. Like I only have a moon board in my garage. Like, and I just want, and the moon board is fingery and difficult. So how do you warm up on something that is fingery and difficult? and this could apply to when you are out in the middle of nowhere. Colorado is
Hmm.
famous for like the V12 warm up, like hike for an hour and a half, do a pull up on a couple of holds, and then try to do the V12. And I just I thought it was a good question because it's something that is really common, especially when you go outdoors or if you have a home wall. And just for me, there's a lot off the wall warming up. I do a lot of shoulder prep. I do a lot of hangboard. If I'm outdoors, I'll do a tension block, kind of that like one-handed thing, and I'll actually do that kind of what they call it, like the minimum hangs. Like, I'm not like necessarily like getting onto my block, pulling as hard as I can on the smallest crimp to warm up my fingers. I'm doing like really gentle, all the different grip types, just kind of getting some blood flowing. And then the one that I think is underrated, and you can do this outdoors and indoors, is find some good holds. Ideally it's a little steeper, whether it's the top out on your project or some of the better moonboard holds, and just walk your feet all around and do a heel hook up and to the right by your head. Do a heel hook low, do a toe hook, just stay on, just keep walking your feet all around and being like really tight and using bad feet or things that shouldn't be a heel hook. And there's a lot of climbing that is not just moving from hold to hold. It's just like moving your body around. So that's my little hack for if there's not a lot of climbs to do, I'll just find a hold to hang off of and then walk my feet all over.
Yeah, so you're basically like breaking down little sections of climbing that you know is good without forcing too much intensity on the rest of your body. I actually have a question for you because yeah, you climb a lot on just like a moonboard, and I find it really hard to warm up on just a moonboard. I don't think I've ever really been in a situation where I have to warm up just for a moonboard, especially for a moonboard session, which is a little bit different than like maybe using the moonboard also as a warm up tool. Like as part of my, for example, like at a competition, if I have isolation, there's, a vert wall with a bunch of holds and then a moon board and a tension board, like I'll use all three of them. But very rarely am I needing just a moon board for just a moon board session. My question was, do you run into like, some sessions where you're a bit lazy or you're a bit slow, and then you run into like the problem that you know is a problem, like a repetitive problem, like your shoulder gets tweaked or your fingers get, maybe you get flash pumped or something, or do you just like never run into those, or like yeah, when you were earlier on, did you have to teach yourself how to warm up on that board? Yeah, I'm curious if you run into issues in your warm up.
I'm pretty good with my warming up now, and I spend the time, and so I don't have that many issues anymore where uh, y- you know I really don't want to hurt my shoulder or my fingers. So I put quite a bit of time. And then if I go to a problem that I think is going to be tweaky, I will try to mimic that move, with, I don't know, with a similar holds or something, and just kind of like ease into it. Because that's the thing about the moon board, is that you have to try 105%. And so, you really want to make sure you're warmed up for that. And it's, I just think it's I want to get tired before I try hard. I think that's always a warm up thing that people don't quite realize, is that I often kind of warm up slowly, and then I have my plan or my stage 2 warm up where I try something and I do maybe a few, mid range or harder ones for me. I actually get tired from it, and then I take like 15 minutes and I rest, like not 5 minutes, not two, like 15 minutes, and now I'm ready. And so I guess maybe just because I found the moon board later on in my climb career, I'm a little older and I really value the warm up. I spend that time to get warmed up, and I just think that that's my best tip though, is if you can't climb around, because the moon board, at least the 2016, starts at V4, but grabbing onto like the two best holds and then just walking your feet all around really keeps it controlled, and you're getting that tension and that strength, or that blood flow, and you're learning how to press on your feet, and you can actually get pretty darn tired just staying on the wall for 30 seconds moving your feet all around. So yeah, I mean, I'm stealing that as my, or not stealing that, I'm putting that forward as my pro tip. That's how I warm up when it's just a moon board or I'm out in the middle of nowhere and my project is the only thing that's there. It's like there's no V2 jug haul to warm up on. So
Yeah,
that's my pro tip, Tim. There you go.
that's a really good pro tip. I think something that you also just hovered over that is a really important aspect of warming up is getting tired before you like start trying the harder stuff. And I do want to explain a little bit as to my understanding as to why that's really important. And this is more actually an advice for like youth comp kids or people who compete, in isolation, you're very afraid to like spend anything extra than you think you need to. And I find constantly I'm talking to, comp kids who like don't really know how to warm up and they're like, yeah, I just got out there and got flash pump. It's like, that's probably because you didn't get tired before, but it's not necessarily the corollary isn't just like you get tired and you're not going to get flash pumped, because you can get tired and then still get flash pumped. I think the thing is that people aren't used to being tired while they're climbing, especially when they're trying to have like really high performance rips. So like your first try off of like a cold turkey session or like a rest day or something, I think you aren't familiar with the fact that climbing is still difficult physically. And so like putting yourself through something that's like physically difficult, whether it's climbing, like for me, I actually just do push-ups a lot, or like, yeah, pull-ups, or just like arbitrary things that aren't climbing movements that get me pretty tired. And it helps me, yeah, like wire the part of my brain that's like, oh, okay, it's cool to like have physical effort that is strenuous and almost a negative feeling where it's like that's too hard, but then also still focus on your climbing, because I think we react. That's the another big thing about warm up is like you don't really want to go from like some warm up to then climbing and then have a bunch of reactions where it's like, oh, I don't want to do that, like, oh, I don't want to do this, like, oh, I should grab harder here, I should do this. I don't think that's how like a good session goes. I think you feel very natural, but if you wake those things up beforehand, then you don't have to think about them on your first couple of tries. um, Nice, Josh.
Yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
great secrets.
Just to put a number on, I'm usually 20 or 30 minutes off the wall before I even pull on,
Nice.
for even that, like kind of any kind of warm up on the moonboard. So just to give it an idea of like, I'm on that hangboard for 6 sets, sometimes often feet on the ground sets, just if there's pull-ups, like, yeah, like 30 minutes before I even get on that wall. And that may be excessive for some people, but I've got a lot of injuries, Tim. I've got a lot of old
Yeah.
injuries. So maybe before we talk about Will Bosi, you got a pro tip?
No, I don't. I did
How
I
come
did
I
not.
totally blanked too, but then I came up with
Yeah.
that good one on the fly on accident, Tim.
I
Okay.
know. I was thinking about pro tips, but I was like, actually, this discussion's been like a million pro tips, so I think we're good.
Okay.
Maybe I'll come up with one
You
on the
jerk.
fly.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
What kind of bro is that? Uh, Will Bosi climbed V17 in your backyard. He solidified the grade. There was some question marks there of the low start to Sleepwalker, put up by Daniel Woods. Of how many years ago did he do Return of the Sleepwalker?
Ooh, I don't know. Was it during COVID?
It might have
I
been
think it
during
was
COVID,
during
and he
COVID.
did just kind of cool to see another confirmed V17. This season, I don't know, man. This is one of the reasons why I love the winter. Even if I'm not sending my hardest stuff, just seeing new hard sends getting added. I love refreshing 8a.new and seeing the news. I guess who was I talking to about this? It seems like now every day there's amazing sends happening. So I guess maybe it doesn't feel as crazy, but it wasn't always like that. It used to be a very big deal. Like the example I use is I remember when lucid dreaming got repeated,
Mm,
it's like, it was like, oh my God, it happened. And I still am excited for this season. We did that whole podcast on the hard, the new. It's because there is hard shit going down, and there is new shit going down, and they are hard, and climbing is hard, and people are doing it at a higher level. And I just got handed to Will Bosi for sending. I mean, I guess it wasn't that surprising after seeing his progress on Sleepwalker, but it's still incredible, dude. V17, good job, Will. Good job.
yeah, good job, Will. I mean, I think it wasn't surprising that he did return so quickly. Actually, it still was for me. I was like, how is he linking so fast? But I think the thing that was also for me not necessarily surprising, but I know for a lot of people was surprising, was him doing Sleepwalker so quickly. Because it just seems like an off style from maybe the other climbing that he's doing that is hard. And yeah, I mean, it's cool that the V17 seemed to be like all pretty different styles and like different hold types, and that's why it's so cool that he's doing a lot of them. um, but yeah, man, just even his session updates, I couldn't believe how many sessions he was having so consistently. That just for a little bit of reference, a lot of what I end up talking about Sleepwalker for some people is like just being conditioned enough, like seriously conditioned enough with your body to be able to even try Sleepwalker for a couple of hours is pretty tough. Like you need to be really really strong. Like there's nothing about the left leg that prevents me from trying Sleepwalker. I think I can actually try Sleepwalker right now. There is
Ooh,
no chance I would try Sleepwalker right now because it would break my back in half. Like I'm not
ooh.
conditioned enough to try super, super hard. Yeah, it's like I think people focus on like the movement types and the hold types and stuff. But it's like, dude, pulling on underclings like that over and over again, or just slapping your right hand if you're not really doing that move in succession over and over again, is brutal. Like, I don't know how. I actually have. I'm super curious to talk to him about it sometime. Like, yeah, what did it look like? What did it feel like to doing that thing? Like, I don't know how many sessions it was on within like 2 weeks of time. Playing with weather in the head, like there were so many factors other than Will just doing Return of the Sleepwalker. Like I heard there was a ton of people out there, just lots of cameras, like lots of energy, and like his ability to just be humble and be like, whatever, I'm just trying a hard climb. Like there's a lot of cool stuff about Will doing Return other than just another V17 going down. Like really props to him.
This
It's
is the
pretty
thing
awesome.
that people don't talk about often enough, I think, is that yes, Will Bosi was physically capable of doing it, and he did it. But just because someone's physically capable of something does not mean it happens. And he's far from home. There's pressure.
Yeah.
There's weather. There's I'm sure. I mean, well, we should talk to him. Like, there's always something. It's like, oh, and I kind of had like tweaked my ankle 2 weeks. I'm not saying he did. I just mean like there's
Mm-hmm.
always something. And so doing something at that limit and doing something that hard and just doing it like I guess I'm not anywhere near that level, but I have climbed near my limit, and I just know how hard it is. Like it takes so much out of you, and so just respect him for he's on one right now. He is sending at his limit, and he's got the ball rolling. And I'm kind of curious to see what's next. I don't know. I mean, there's Megatron. I wonder what he's going to get on next.
Did somebody tell you that he was going to try Megatron?
No, but it's
Oh,
V17. I
somebody
mean,
somebody told me that he was interested. So
oh,
maybe we'll see him go and try Megatron.
jeez.
His trip is still, I think he's still got some time on his trip, so I don't think there's nothing. Well, there is something that he could try here, but I think he may leave here and go somewhere else. But is my speculation based on other information. But I am super curious to see what his rock climb. I'm curious if he's going to compete and like go back into comp climbing. Yeah, I'm super curious to see what goes on with Will. But also, like, I don't even feel that much pressure to ask because I'm just like just having fun watching, and like he does a good job posting and like posting updates and stuff. Like it's pretty sick. He's
He does
he's
he's such a good job at being a pro, just being out there,
mm-hmm,
being friendly, putting up those updates, putting a smile on. I
yeah,
don't know. Maybe it's I'm sure it is all authentic, but it's all
mm-hmm,
easy to see that from afar. But it's hard to do that. He's got the
mm-hmm.
pressure, he's got the cameras, and we can act like it's just he's just shrugging it all off. But like my hunch is that if you were to peel back a couple layers, like that there's a strong I was gonna say there's a strong will behind Will. He's doing it. All right.
Yeah,
Good on Will. Good on Red Rocks for having a solidified V17. Good on Daniel Woods for putting it up. I love watching Daniel Woods climb the bottom of that thing. That's just pure Daniel Deezer beastliness, and I just love it. And Tim, let's go into our main topic. You ready?
let's do it.
Actually, let's do a little announcement. I just wanted to. Tim, you ready? You want to do it? Okay,
I'm
let's.
ready.
Okay.
Okay,
Wait, hold on. Uh,
okay.
I mean, just super quick. Just had another great classroom. Really fun. One of the best. Yeah, just great questions. Thank you to that little community. We actually had Andy Tollefson join us, and
That
Andy
was awesome.
said he wants to join us more often. Andy Tollefson, for those longtime listeners, know he was on the podcast early on. He's now getting another degree or a deeper degree in PT or anatomy.
Mm-hmm.
God, I feel bad. He's he's in
He's trying to
school.
become a PT.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he's in school going even deeper into something he already loved. And so it was really fun to have him come on to the classroom and help people that had some, well, there was a shoulder issue. And yeah, it's kind of like everyone has shoulder issues in climbing to some extent. And one of the big takeaways was even if you don't have a shoulder issue, there is a lot of things that you can do to help prevent it, or even just to make you stronger in like I think that's the thing that people don't get is prehab. So it's like, okay, I want to do this so I don't get injured. And it's like, yes, you should do that. But here's a hint: like this will make you better and will not only make you less likely to get injured, but it will round you out and help target these typically weaker areas, and you will be stronger. So don't do prehab just to not get injured. Do prehab so that you don't have to do rehab and you don't artificially lower your ceiling, because if you're weak in some specific area, honestly, your body often inhibits your ability to get strong in the rest of the areas, because it's like, oh, let's be careful over here. Like, we don't want to get too strong because you don't have any rotator cuff strength and you're just going to snap it if you get out of line. So thank you, Andy. Thank you to all the patrons who joined us in the classroom, and everyone listening. Please join us next month. You know where to sign up, and we'd love to have you.
Oh yeah, love the classrooms. That was a fun one.
Okay, Tim, you're smiling. You're back to climbing, but you're still a little injured. That was a beautiful smile, Tim. And I didn't tell you this, but I like retweaked my back, but I'm still climbing. I'm back to it. And I think the thing that we want to tackle here is there's this last 5 to 10% as you get back from being injured. And it's like, how do you do it? And I told you that I'm struggling a little bit. I'm on the moon board, I'm climbing stuff, quote unquote V8, and having to cheat my way by using Tnuts, but it's not cheating because I didn't lie about it. And this last little bit, it's a struggle for me. And I thought it's an interesting topic to figure out, how do we get back to that peak strength when we've been off for a while, when we've been injured? Because the really important thing is not just getting back to where you were, but getting that next little 1 or 2 or 3 or 5%, because we inevitably backslide, not necessarily through injury, but life. Maybe you got finals, maybe you got kids, whatever the case may be. But you both want to get back to where you were as fast as you can, and you want to push it. And what we're both finding is that last 10% to get back to where you were is a little more difficult than any one of us would like it to be. So I was wondering if you had any tips on how to get back into real shape, real good
Oh
shape
yeah.
after a long break.
Yeah, so I think something I want to speak towards is also not necessarily just the last 10% because I'm not there yet at all in my journey, but that's where you are. And I've had many injuries in the past, and I agree with you. That is probably the hardest, maybe the hardest part is the beginning, but that is the most complex issue is because you get towards like where you were supposed to be, and that like you remember like what shape you were in, especially if you have videos and you're really obsessed with it, like you're still behind where you were before. What I often find though is every time I've gotten injured, I get to that, last like 5-10%, and there's still some like little tweaks, there's still some little bad habits. And all of a sudden, I'm not sure if this is what you feel, but all of a sudden, I shoot straight past that. Like I shoot straight past 100%, and I'm just like riding away for until I get injured again, or I just keep going for a while, and it's great. And that's what happened to me the last like couple of years. Um, but I find that reason, just to speak on it quickly, is because I start to ask myself like different reasons why I can improve in climbing, and until I'm like forced into that scenario where I like need to look differently at it, but then in the meantime still working on the previous things that I know to get me back to normal, then now yeah, I'm getting myself back to normal, but I have this new perspective in climbing that helps me just like rely on totally different things, right? Because you don't want to just rely on everything you've relied on in the past, as we were talking about before. You want to figure out new ways to climb really well. And I'm hopefully Josh and I debunk it for you. There's a million ways to get good at climbing, and so there's not, don't just rely on the one piece of success that you've had or the 10 pieces of success you've had in the past. Always be creative and always be looking for something new. That being said, conditioning is difficult. For me, I think the biggest thing that I'm still lacking right now, and something that has been really hard mentally for me to let go of, and that's really the advice that I have, is to let go of it, is endurance. Just getting into the gym and like not realizing that, man, I can't even stay here very long and like work on the things that I want to work on. There's a whole like psychological thing of like, even halfway up boulders, or like, man, I mean, yeah, especially from like the fitness level that I was at before, is really, really daunting to kind of think about getting back to it. The thing about endurance, though, is it just takes time. It takes consistency, it takes volume, and it takes time. And so there's no reason for me, it's something I had to tell myself, like literally as of this last week, there's no reason for me to like go into the gym or going to a climbing session ever, ever, and be like, oh, like, but this endurance aspect, there's no reason to do that because it's just coming back. Those are the things that are just coming back. So there's things that are just coming back from just doing something consistently, working on good habits, And that is something I still want to go into, but then still looking for new ways to still provide good new habits for climbing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you said to me. You're like, consistency, dude, consistency, and it's
Mhm.
hard. It's hard for me to acknowledge that that's really a big aspect of it. And I will say, I feel like with my age, consistency is actually a little more important. Where, despite what I'd like to say, there is a little bit slower of a recovery process as you get up in the years, but it's not 5x. It's just like, hey, like maybe you needed 15 solid sessions before, and now you need 18. It's like, and and what's funny is that 15 solid sessions, people don't realize that you, whenever you are in shape, it's kind of because you've been doing those mega awesome sessions that are really fun and climbing hard for like months. Like it's not just 2 weeks of good sessions. It's everything lines up. You got your buddies there. You're in a good gym. You're psyched. You're feeling good, and it just builds and builds. And this is why the best injury advice is always don't get injured, because if that 15 sessions becomes 70 sessions,
Mm.
like 70 solid sessions in a row, not day after day after day, just more like week after week after week, really adds up to great climbing. And so I just think that that's like the number one thing that I wanted to get across is that consistency, because I always feel like I turn that corner on getting back into my best shape when I kind of give up on it. When I say, okay, you know what, I'm just going to show up. And yes, I know I'm not going to be quite the same athlete or body that I felt like I should be, but I'm just going to keep showing up. And then I swear to God, right as I just let that sink in, a couple of weeks go by, I'm like, oh, right back at it. But my my other thing that I just kind of like, some more practical things that I put into practice is ramp up a little slower than you think. I would say maybe go more frequently at a little bit lower intensity, kind of right as you're. This may be not that last 10%. This may be like that kind of like 50 to 80% where you're kind of psyched, you're kind of getting back, but just be a little careful, because what I find is that I get so psyched and my mind knows how to try so hard. Even if I don't get re-injured, I just go in and I wreck myself, and maybe I need 2 days of rest. And I'm not saying that's bad. It's just there's an element of consistency of just doing moves, getting that endurance back, where if you bang your head against the wall on a grade that's actually quite low for you but is really hard at the time, it's not always the best use of your time. Sometimes just going in, climbing a bunch is a good way to get back up. And then I think as you get into that last 10%, you start having to remember how to try hard again. And I say this every time I get back. I finally do a hard climb. And maybe it's not my limit climb, but it's like definitely in that hard range for me. And I'm always just shocked at how freaking hard it is. I'm like, whoa, I forgot. Trying hard is hard.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I got more, but I just think those are like some basic fundamentals that we've probably said before, but I'm just reminding myself of it right now.
Yeah. No, I'll hand it back to you, but the one thing I wanted to kind of speak on based on what you're saying is something that's been helpful for me on the other side of consistency. So yeah, I agree with you. I think consistency is really the most important thing to focus on when you're kind of coming back from an injury, especially like noticing how much consistency you can have, right? Because for me, like, there's no chance that I was going to start doing almost anything consistent for the first like couple of weeks. The best thing for me was just to like heal, because if I did anything and like reset any sort of healing process in my knee, I would just have to start from square one. So it's like, okay, understand based on your injury, like what you need to get done before you can provide any sort of consistency at any intensity for climbing. But now I got to a point where I could provide consistency. I was doing consistency and I was getting that same, excitement that you were saying, and like maybe pushing myself a little bit too hard. So I needed to take extra time off, which was bad because what did I need to try harder, or did I actually just need to be consistent? Great. Okay. So I know I need to be consistent. So I had to like re-step. And that was like literally 2 weeks ago. And then I kept going and I was being a little bit more consistent, being a little bit more careful about what I was trying and how much. Like, for example, when I went to go do Wet Dream recently, I pretty much just did a really nice warm up with Felipe, did Wet Dream, and we were there for another like 4 hours at Black Velvet. I could have tried other stuff, and I just decided not to because I knew that what the rest of my week was going to look like, and I was like, cool. I'm like cool with that. I'm happy with that today. If I try anything more, I'm for sure going to need to rest the next couple of days. So I'm really just going to sacrifice that to make sure I can climb more consistently and like do more just like easier volume. The other side of that, and the reason why I tried Wet Dream and the reason why I went and go and did Wet Dream is because picking small goals and like small battles to win is huge. And for me, that's the biggest thing I'm trying to navigate through right now is like, what are the appropriate battles for me to have? And so what I mean by that is like, sometimes I go to the gym and like I have these like warm up projects that we talked about before. I have some moonboard projects that I should do. I have some repeats that I know would be great metrics for me to understand, and that's where kind of Wet Dream came from. Was I knew we were going to go to Black Velvet, and I was like kind of thinking about it, yeah, logically, like what would be healthy for my knee to do, but also like what would show me that I'm on an upward trend for getting back. And it was something like Wet Dream. That's something that Josh and I talked about before we started recording. Was like the style of Wet Dream is something that even in a worse shape, and even something that I can't use the proper techniques on, it's still you know the fundamental techniques to get that type of climbing done is something that I still can do even if I'm physically weaker. And so finding that's what I mean by finding the right battles is like, well, don't go and do that like one tiny crimp project that's just like a one move project as your earliest battle. That might be your final battle, your the final boss to see like, okay, maybe I'm like back, but I wouldn't go and test that like just a couple of weeks into your rehab journey. Like, no, I'm finding all these little wins that I can have, or sometimes losses. And I was doing some like comp style movements at Refuge the other day, and like I was falling all over the place, and I was like, oh, at the and then immediately initially I was getting like kind of demoralized, and I was like, oh man, like I want to compete. Like I had all the thoughts, of course, but then I started thinking, I was like, okay, but what do I need to do to actually get this climb done? And I ended up having a phenomenal session on it. I was having tons of fun. Felipe came and flashed it, and I was like, oh man, like that's what it looks like when you're actually like good in comp shape. There was just so many great lessons I could take away from that, because I was like, well, I think like in a weird way, if Felipe wasn't there and that comp climb wasn't there, like I would almost have never tried something in that style, But there was something with the whole session mentality and just allowing myself to have fun and like pick a specific battle that day. And I was like, okay, great. Like I actually came into that gym session knowing that I was just gonna pretty much just moonboard, and I just like let my feelings go and be like, oh, but that climb's sick, and just kept picking like little battles, and I still want to continue doing that. And so, for example, I want to go and try Trieste. Like Trieste is something that's really, really difficult, and I'm not sure if I'm going to do it, but I just want to go and start trying it because it's a climb that has a bunch of moves that I know are probably okay for my leg. And again, just picking another battle and finding little goals to have.
Dude, I love that you said picking your battles and then making sure that it was okay for your leg. Because that was my next tip is when you have been injured, especially, is finding those projects. And it could just be a single move that is safe for you to try really hard on. And if you have not
Mm.
gotten the opportunity to really hang it all out there and feel safe while doing it, it's hard to get to that level, and sometimes, if it was a pulley, maybe now you need to look for an open hand. If it is a heel hook that you got hurt on, well, definitely don't do even a minor heel hook to really find that 110% try hard. Ideally it's like that leg isn't being used at all, just something that allows you to really try super hard on. And I think it's amazing that you got to just cruise up Wet Dream when you're off the couch. Wet Dream, repeat, strong. It goes to show you, Tim. It goes to show me a bunch of things. But one of the things that I think about that is that we talked about this. We wanted to make sure this didn't come off in the wrong way. But Wet Dream is, I don't want to say it's not easy. In fact, it's hard for the grade, but it's easy in the sense that it's like a longer boulder problem with good holds. And when you have the kind of technique that Tim does and probably some base of endurance, but really it's that like technique. And you still have some fundamental finger strength and body strength levels, but I just know that you kind of just wormed your way up there. And what I would put out there, Tim, and we'll see what you think about this, is my hunch is that the way you did it uh, this time, you probably actually in some ways climbed it the easiest you've ever climbed it, because you kind of probably were half-assing it. You're kind of like, be careful on that knee, be careful on that knee. And you're just kind of, okay, like really, I know that when I get hurt and I'm weak, I like really lean into beta. I like really get my feet right. And it's just funny how, I mean, it's impressive that that's the climb that you can do that on. But I also think it's good to kind of pick that apart a little bit and showcase people why it was Wet Dream. And I also, I'd like to hear that, but then I also want to hear, am I right? Where do you think you climbed it like in some ways the easiest you've ever climbed it? I think you know what I mean by that.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I was trying to do that. I knew that that was like an aspect of what I wanted to get done that day. I ended up basically my first, so we had a long warm up, and then my first try, I fell on the like the cross move to the slot where you like the way that I do is catch a toe hook, but I tried to jump to it. And actually, so that was interesting where I cruised like everything to there, and I tried to jump, and I was like, oh man, I'm like not strong enough to hold this thing with a jump anymore. Like I thought that that would be better because it would be faster, and the worry that I had, like I said, was endurance. I was like, I'd rather just climb this thing faster. Then I took like a little bit of a long break because I got kind of flash pumped, and then I did the next try. And that's what I was focusing on then, is like, but what is all of the easiest ways that I would do all these movements? And it didn't feel that way, but I think it was that way, where it actually was definitely the hardest it's felt when I've since, ever I think I've done it at least 10 times at this point, because I used to like, especially for Sleepwalker sessions, I would do either that or one of the variations after the end of the session, because Sleepwalker, you don't do that much climbing. If you're just trying Sleepwalker, you just slap the right hand a bunch of times, and then I get with the session, I'm like, dude, I haven't climbed at all, like I just want to do Wet Dream. So I'll just usually just do Wet Dream, a lap on it, which also helps, like knowing exactly what it's supposed to feel like. I think even if you feel a little bit weaker, you're like, well, but I know like the hair thin margin of like still being able to do the moves. So that was helpful. But yeah, I was trying to focus for sure on like doing the moves the
Yeah,
easiest
just
way, just
just so
because
you
I
don't
couldn't
make me sound
physically.
like a doof. You said it felt like the hardest that you've done it, but you know what I mean by you climbed it
Yes.
the easiest, right? Like just highlight
Yes.
that so I don't just come off as being an
Yes.
idiot.
I was exactly what you were saying. I was just focusing on the technique. I was just focusing on like, oh, but what does that foot do, and like where should I turn? But what I meant by it felt the hardest was like it still was shocking to me like how bad in shape I actually am, but it's cool that I can do that climb, and like, yeah, just I guess it's hard to explain, but like when I usually do that climb, it actually isn't physically strenuous. Like the last, I don't know how many laps I've done it, like it isn't physically strenuous anymore. But by the way, in the beginning, it took me like 6 sessions to do the climb. And so I'm not saying it's an easy climb by any means. I always tell people it's like V12.7. Like it's one of the harder 12s for sure. But once you do it, yeah, you can just keep doing it. And when I did it, it felt really hard. Like I realized that the story didn't post the top, but man, I was thrutching for the last move and I almost fell. And actually, the reason why I didn't fall was because I was mostly scared of falling, because I haven't taken a fall that big on my knee yet. And I was like, dude, you are not falling. I did the move completely wrong then. And that's kind of also where I started to see the difference. I was like, man, I did all the moves down low like pretty well. And I don't know if you could tell, but like there's two moves down low where, the first move is a really heavy left foot move. And then the move to the shoulder is like really heavy on the left foot. I had to pick completely different beta and like completely different foot movements, because I was like, if I do it the way that I was doing it before, I'm going to hurt my knee. So I completely had to do a different way of climbing it entirely. But yeah, just to repeat what Josh was saying, I'm just focusing as much as possible on the techniques that get me the moves done. And I know very well what those are, especially on that climb. And so my goal is to just continuously pick, like, I'm not going to try even a new climb, even if it's a couple grades easier than Wet Dream, unless I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing on it. Like for example, I tried Slice and Dice the other day, but it's like I observed it. You should see me walk up to it. Like I didn't even try it for a while because I was just reading the moves and like seeing what I could do on it. And if I thought that it was going to be too much on my leg, I wouldn't have tried it. And so I'm constantly thinking, even now this morning, like tonight, I'm going to be thinking about climbs that I know I've already done in the past that maybe aren't going to be so strenuous on my leg, but that I could still focus on the good techniques to get me up that climb. Because I am not physically remotely close to where I was 3 months ago. But I know climbing and I can still work on those things and still actually get climbing done. And that's actually a great training for me. Like I felt like I walked away from the Wet Dream session. I was like, oh, like I got pumped on it. And that was great. And man, just even getting that feeling of like getting pumped is just, it's such a big win, because like, I don't know, maybe it's just like a
Look at that
weightlifter's
smile.
mentality or something. But when you get pumped, like, you're getting stronger, like
Yeah.
that's what you almost want, is to get pumped, and like, yeah, it sucks to not get pumped.
Ah, don't worry, Tim. There's a million ways to get better at climbing. there,
Yes, there are.
there's steroids, EPO, eating disorders. Uh, I'm
Oh,
joking. Yeah, I'm just kidding. I did want to say that we posted a poll on Spotify after the last podcast where we talked a bit about the enhanced games and yeah, doing drugs or PEDs, performance enhancing drugs. And I found the results kind of interesting. The poll was, would you ever consider doing PEDs to help send your project? And I put the different answers were yes, never, yes, but not lie about it, and then yes, only for evolution, which is just me making fun of all the people who make fun of me. And and dude, the results were kind of interesting. Only 50%, less than 50% of people said never. Quite a big chunk of people said yes, and then yes, but not lie about it, and then yes, only for evolution. But I'm gonna lump all those yeses about 50% and no about 50%.
wow.
I was kind of surprised, man. I kind of was like, I don't know. I guess there are a million ways to get better at climbing that don't have to do with climbing, and people are at least and people are okay with doing some of the more sketchy ones. Just wanted to put that out there. Kind of a
Yeah.
surprising result to the poll. I
I'm not
figured
here
I'd
to
share.
judge at all, but I definitely, yeah, I'm definitely in the never boat.
Tim's not
I
here to
think,
judge, but don't do drugs. Yeah.
well, yeah, I'm not here to judge, and I'm not here to ever tell anybody what to do or what not to do. But I will share, something that you and I conversed about a bit before that poll came out, which was like, why do them? Why do them and why not, right? And so the reasons why I wouldn't do them, I just want to reiterate for those people who maybe just wrote yes and like maybe didn't think about it. This is something that's worth thinking about. And this is part of the conversation about injuries too. Like, why would I want to get back? Like why would I want to get back to my form? Why would I want to push my form? It's because, oh, why am I doing this in the first place? It's like, oh, well, what's even fun for me in the first place? Because just getting up a V17 alone, I'm sorry, the truth is, wouldn't be fun if it wasn't because I worked hard for it. If it was any reason why it wasn't me working hard for it, I don't think it would be very fun. And that's just obviously speculation because I haven't gone up a V17 and I haven't done performance enhancing drugs for any sort of climbing. But, I don't I'm pretty sure that I wouldn't feel good about my success if it wasn't me who got me that success, right? And so especially at the highest level. Early on, I don't think I care that much. Like really, really early on in my journeys, like maybe I wouldn't care that much. But as you do it for over a decade and you've really, really put thought and work and care into it, I don't think anyone who puts that much work and care into it would want to do those drugs. So it's just food for thought. Again, I'm not judging. I'm just saying like that's how I think about it.
Yeah, I don't want to go deep into this topic again since we did a podcast on it,
Mm-hmm.
but I just thought it was interesting to bring up the poll because you put this out there and you hear back from other people, and that's just what they said. And I don't know. I'm not here to judge people. I just wanted to share the information and take what you will from it. So
Yeah.
uh,
I have a
that's
question for
all.
you,
Oh,
Josh.
go for it.
On the note of getting back, because you're saying you're kind of pretty close to getting back to where you feel normally. What do you think you're gonna? I'm gonna put you on the spot. What do you think you're gonna do, or what do you think you're gonna focus on to get yourself back to above and beyond where you were before?
The two things that I feel like, well, I mean, not to, I'm basically just repeating what we said. The two things is I really need a strong crew around me.
Mm-hmm.
I just need it, man. I've talked about this before where I know people who can just go into their basement hang board. They have a little 6 foot tall wall that they build their own holds on, and they're just trying their 120%, and then they just come out of the basement where they've been in a solo session. They're mutants and they just are as strong as can be. And that's just not me. I need I need the crew. And so really focusing on developing that. I have a crew here, but a lot of them have kids. A lot, like, we're all so busy. It's just linking it up. I just I actually really want people who are younger and part of that Tuesday, Thursday night session at a wonderful gym to really appreciate how wonderful that is and how crucial that is for getting strong and for just enjoying life. And I just got to tell you, I have to work really hard and plan far in advance and cajole my friends into getting their nanny to stay late so that we can have even one day a week where we're showing up and trying fucking hard together. and psyched. And so just taking that as a responsibility, it's lame because that's not like the most fun part of climbing, but I have to work hard for the opportunity to get to have those sessions. And then Tim, just consistency. And I'll tell you what's part of that, man, is I tweaked my back. I said again, this is like a kind of tweak. It's not the end of the world. It took me out for like a couple of days, but I did it skiing powder at North Star, which is awesome. But I kind of am recognizing that one of the things to perform at my highest level is that it needs to take a lot of my focus. And I'm kind of trying to let some of my other things go. That, dude, skiing is fun. I mean, of course. And everyone has something that's fun. And sometimes when you're younger, you have either like the physical or just time capacity to do those other things. But Tim, I'm kind of like, I'm kind of going to stop skiing, which is hard for me to say, but yeah, I mean, it sounds like a first world problem to have, but it's whatever that thing is to pull back on, to then recognize that usually when you've performed at your highest level, it takes a bigger chunk of your essence than you want to admit. It's, if you want to
Yeah.
climb, maybe some people can climb V17 and it's only 10% of their life essence. But for me to climb at my best, it's much more than 10%. And I'm just saying life essence. I don't know what the hell that means. I'm just making shit up, but you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's it. That's what I'm doing, Tim.
Oh, dude, that's really good. I do want to just kind of reiterate some of the things we were saying. And Felipe, for me, saved my climbing life for sure. I didn't realize it at the time how important it was for me to have somebody who was psyched and shared a lot of the same feelings that I have about climbing. But watching him do it with humility and like a lot of effort, man, that really helps a lot. And yeah, I definitely, after this conversation, I will just go ahead and just cherish it for now. Like I don't really need to do anything more. Just like I'm just gonna enjoy the next couple of
Go give
weeks
him
and
that
just
hug. That's just a little too long. Just give him that, like, just a little too long of a
he'll
hug.
be like, "What's wrong? Like
That's your pro
is
tip:
something
is
wrong?"
everyone go get a Felipe. That's what
Go
you
get a
need.
Felipe. But yeah, that consistency, man, it matters a lot. Hopefully you guys got a little bit of what I was sharing before about my experience going to the gym. Like my vomit mouth was so bad. I assumed it wasn't going to be bad. So don't ever assume that you just like, because you're aware that some things might be going wrong. Don't assume that you're doing the best things that you can be doing to make sure it's not happening. Because I for sure wasn't, and I feel like that's actually my strong suit, is like kind of my internal mental game. And man, it was not doing well for me. The amount of volume that I need to have before I could even take sessions seriously to be consistent early on to build that foundation again was pretty tough. And like not pushing it early on, I think was kind of for me like the biggest point that I've been learning a lot now.
Dude.
Dude, I built a freaking vert wall in my backyard just to like be able to grab holds.
Oh, that's
Like
awesome.
I didn't even climb. Like I didn't even climb. That was like a month ago or 2 months ago. Like I couldn't. I knew I couldn't climb hard, so I just built something to be able to just grab holds and work on things that I knew I needed to work on. By the time I could try hard,
Dude,
matters a lot.
fundamentals, the crew, the mental state, the positive talk. And I love that you're sharing that. Just because we know something doesn't mean you don't have to like remind yourself and relearn it. And just in that last episode, Tim was talking about, Josh, like, you need to jump off that foot. Like, just let's zoom out. Like, what do you have to do? It's like, oh, that's right. Damn. Fundamentals. So just hammer that in. I know that every move is different and sometimes you have to do things that's not fundamental, but every time you have your sessions, zoom out what's fundamental. And it makes me think of the Bruce Lee quote. I don't fear a man that's practiced 10,000 kicks. I fear the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times. And dude, I thought you'd like, that's
Wait,
like a
I've
black
never
belt
I've
shit.
never heard that quote.
Hold
That
on,
is
I gotta look
so
this up
good.
while you're laughing at me.
That is
Bruce
such a
Lee
good quote.
quote about 10,000. Yeah, dude. All right.
I want Bruce Lee to coach me in my climbing,
Yeah,
dude.
here it is. I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. Bam.
Dude, I would fear that guy too. That kick
Okay.
is probably painful.
Boom. Okay. Let's leave on that. Actually, as we go, shout out to my good buddy Will Fraker for flashing Iron Resolution.
Iron Res. Wow.
That's sick, dude. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. I just love that guy.
So
I just
awesome.
wanted to shout out because
Love Will.
that's amazing. Okay, Tim, love keep that smile. I'm glad you didn't say phenomenal when I asked you how you were doing, and keep go give Felipe a big long hug for me.
All right. All right, guys. See
Come
you
back
guys at the
next
next
time.
classroom.
Sounds good. All right, take care, Tim.
Take care. See ya.
Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like even more content, go to patreon.com/testpiece. And while you're at it, share this podcast with someone you know who would love it. And please leave us a review or rating at wherever you get your podcasts. We've also got tons of great content on YouTube and Instagram, so don't forget to like and subscribe there. Okay, see you next week.